How would you recommend? I mean, this has lots of characters, so you're probably not.
I've got it. Yes. Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. We do have one.
We did. Okay. Thank you. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. If you could take your seats, please, we'll get started. Very sound good. All right, everyone, welcome to our October Staff Senate meeting. Thank you to those of you in attendance and those of you attending virtually. Welcome to any guests who we may have who are in attendance. If you would, please see Jessica Mackey here at the front so that we can keep track of our guests, and also thank you for attending. As a reminder, per the bylaws, we welcome guests, but the only individuals who can speak during the meeting are elected staff senators. We have been informed that we have met quorum by our parliamentarian and by our secretary, so we can conduct the business of the day. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the September minutes. Those have been inspected and found to be correct. Is there a motion to adopt the September minutes? Senator Hodge moves. Is there a second? Senator Epps seconds. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. We are going to be very respectful of our Vice President for Human Resources, Caroline Agardy's time. So we will move directly into hearing from Caroline Agardy. Caroline, as always, is very open and eager to speak to our group. We did receive some questions in advance, but Caroline also said she's happy to take some from the floor. So Caroline's got some remarks, then we will get into the pre-submitted questions, and then we will also take questions from the floor. So Caroline, thank you very much again for being with us.
Thank you, Tyson. It's great to be with you all today. I saw today was World Mental Health Day, and we commend the Staff Senate for identifying additional resources for for USC employees. These are things that your committees are working on, and I also saw a recent survey that 1 in 3 workers said that they would sacrifice pay for a workplace that provided increased mental health benefits. And that's global. That was in the latest SHRM magazine. But it just goes to show how important mental health benefits are for employees. As you all know, we have our EAP program. We also have our insurance that provides mental health counseling, behavioral counseling for employees and their families. And again, the Staff Senate, I know, is working on a lot of neat things with that. And we know it increases employee retention to recognize mental health and have resources around for our employees. One of the, as we were talking in our leadership team meeting recently in HR, one of the things I was reminded of is during the COVID pandemic period, there was a committee that was formed to look at mental health resources, and a lot of those were put on, at the time, University Health Services website, and of course that's switched back to Student Health Services, but that might be something we can look again and see where we can ensure all of these different programs and opportunities are noted in one place so that employees will have just kind of a one-stop shop to know what's available to them. As you all are probably aware, the Division of Human Resources, we sponsored an employee benefits expo. We called it the Employee Wellness and Health Expo. It was last week, week before last, sorry. And it was well attended. We had almost 400 attendees. We also had different screenings that happened above the room, and some people didn't even drop by the Russell House Ballroom to see the vendors because they went just for their health screening. So we really had a large number of employees come, but in the just in the room that we were counted almost had 400 visitors. So we were pleased to have that. And we really tried to showcase not only things like insurance and retirement, but also other benefits available across the university. And we partnered with a broad range of people across the Columbia campus so that we had a lot of buy-in and support, and kind of rebranded this into an expo rather than the old-fashioned benefits fair. But for those that you who may have attended, I hope you enjoyed it and got a lot of good information from that. This is October is open enrollment for your health plan, and so I wanted to just mention that. I know employees are kind of looking at what kinds of things can I do, and then will there be a price increase? There is none for health insurance beginning in January, but there will be a slight increase for vision care and also the dental plus. So look for those and know that that's coming. And also there's an option to increase optional life with certification of your health being good. And so if anybody's interested in doing that, they should do that during open enrollment. This is the time to add and take off dependents if you haven't done that on a qualifying event, but also to look at whether or not another plan is better for you. And you do have to enroll in the Money Plus, the health the dependent care, and also the medical spending account each year. So I just wanted to remind you of that. We have a few projects going on in HR. We always seem to have a few projects going on in HR. One of them is our EPMS project revamping. I think I've told this group before, and a lot of you have changed, but before the pandemic, the state HR that we're subject to had looked at the EPMS process and got a committee together and felt like it needed to be changed and revamped. We were going to automate our process after PeopleSoft and waited until that committee was going to get through. They finished up right before COVID in 20. And to be honest with you, y'all remember we implemented PeopleSoft in 19, the spring of 19, and 20, knowing this committee was going to be giving their report to the state. We did not, go ahead and automate our form, knowing it might change. And then, of course, COVID hit. The state decided at that time that they had more important things to do, addressing the various things with the pandemic. So we all put that project on hold. And they are in the process of rolling that out in the spring of this next year. And so we've had a committee that we stood up to kind of go alongside what they're doing to ensure the USC EPMS process will comply with the state's new guidelines, but also automate our forms so it can go electronically from the supervisor, the employee, also the reviewing officer, and then come to HR electronically. I know that's well overdue. When I came here, I had that in my last organization, and to be kind of hamstrung and not have it automated was not a good place to be. But we also were trying to implement the PeopleSoft system after a 40-year legacy system, and that took priority. So anyway, just wanted you to know that is on the that is being worked on. I know Megan is on our team, and one of the things they're looking at is the different levels. I mean, there are a lot more things we can do, whether or not we need mid-year feedback or feedback just at the end of the year, a way that the employee can actually give their feedback up front, so the supervisor will hear from the employee what they think they did well during the year, rather than the supervisor just rating the employee. So you'll see some hopefully improved processes and also improved feedback as part of this process. Another thing we're working on with the bursar's office is a process whereby we will expand our tuition assistance program to both time limited and research grant employees. Right now we have a tuition reimbursement policy for them, but all we're trying to do is have them have the same policy that we have in terms of tuition assistance, whereby they can upfront get that covered, and then all they have to do is maintain the grade that they need in order to get have that be reimbursed. And so that's something that we're working with the bursar's office on. We're consulting also with another university that does this because of the integration with Banner and how all of this works. So we run into a couple of little obstacles, but we'll get that over the finish line, hopefully in January, if not right after that. So those are two projects I thought you might want to hear about today. We are always looking at other things and working on various things within HR. I mean, things inside baseball that y'all wouldn't want to know about, like we rolled out a new training program for our HR contacts today, a week-long program, so that they can be better equipped to do their jobs. And with that, we automated all we updated all the forms, the aids for them, and one of these is related to a question, so I guess I'll kind of get into that now. There was a question about the hiring process that had come up, and I thought I would also share with y'all that we had an audit this summer on our hiring process, so that internal audit and advisory services came and looked at us to see how we could do better. And some of the things that they talked about were creating and updating our aids, which we were already in the process of doing. We were also, they wanted us to have some help techs for HR contacts, because sometimes they're maybe not selecting the right thing in the system that we have. And so we're meeting with our HR contacts, I believe, next week to get their input on what would be helpful to them. In addition, when we implemented our current applicant tracking system, People Admin, which is how the hiring process starts, we had allowed each area to determine what their workflow would be. Like if it needed to go to a business manager before they posted a position, then they could do that, and then it could then come to us within the system. And one of the things audit said to us is consider standardizing the process, because sometimes it's confusing if you work in one department and then go to another department. The workflow is different based on your department. We were trying to meet our customer needs. There was a lot of pushback to customize it or standardize it when we implemented the People Admin applicant tracking system in 2017. And so we're going to revisit that again. And hopefully some of those improvements would also make the whole process faster. In addition, during the time of the audit, they looked back at the period where we were doing the class and comp study. And so some of the position descriptions that would come in for updating before a position got posted got in the queue there and took longer than they would normally take, because we were in the middle of that process, or project. So one of the things we are doing there is putting some metrics around how long a position description will take. We had already made sure that when it's submitted to us, we tell them, do you want it posted right away, or do you want it posted later? And so if they say posted later, they weren't in a hurry, we put in those the things that came in first. So those are a few things we're looking at in that entire hiring process. But we also know that, filling positions when we vacate jobs is so important. And not only do we have a part in it, but every area has a part in it. And, when you're a manager and you're hiring a position and you post it, you're certainly hoping you're going to get qualified applicants coming into it. I was talking to a dean last Monday, and she said, "Oh, we're getting far more qualified applicants than we've gotten in the past." I'm so pleased with the market survey. I mean, that was the dean at the School of Medicine in Greenville, and it was really good to hear her experience with it. But along with that, getting the good applicants, you also have to be ready to look at those candidates, have your search committee or your interview panel ready to go, and be able to schedule those interviews. So sometimes the fact that it drags out for a number of reasons, as you may well know. I know sometimes people, because they had to pay out a lot of annual leave when somebody leaves, they on purpose don't want to fill it before that annual leave is paid out. So there are a lot of times why people are kind of delaying in the hiring process. But I did want to mention that. And speaking of retention, our retention rate, our turnover rate decreased by about 2% this past fiscal year, which it's going in the right direction. But I also wanted to give you some numbers that I've got from 2023 on the reasons people leave the university. In terms of this year, they're saying personal is number one. That was 20%, and this is in the last fiscal year. And the next one was salary or compensation. That was at 18.22%. Retiring was at 17.31%. So that's okay if people finally decide they want to retire and move on. Work climate, 88.88%. And then job advancements, and I would consider that lack of job advancement, 7.75, and then relocation, 7.0. We used to have a category called other, and when we got rid of the other, that helped a lot. But last year in 2022, the number one reason was salary compensation at 19.06%, with personal being 17.81 and retiring 15.31. So again, we're at least going in the right direction and when it comes to turnover rate. But those were my remarks for today. Like I say, I'll be happy to answer any questions that some of them you sent in advance, and then others, just whatever you might have that you want to ask me about.
I'll go through the pre-submitted ones and then we'll open it up to the floor. So you touched on this one, the plans to increase the speed of hiring process. So you touched on, is there anything else you wanted to say?
The other thing in the audit was, and we know our system is not great. We have people admin for our applicant tracking system. We have people soft for our ERP or our, just HR payroll system. And the applicant tracking system is not great. It doesn't integrate with the other. And so it's really a burden for some. And it's also where we do our onboarding. And so we put a lot of things in onboarding in PeopleSoft, but the system we have is not great. Audit called us out for that, but we have no money to replace what we have. We have asked for a talent management system, but we also think looking at the whole ERP eventually will come. And so many of our other institutions are going to just a full life cycle kind of system. I know Clemson just did a bid. I'm not sure. The last time I asked them a couple of weeks ago, they couldn't tell me who they went with yet, but a lot of them are going to Oracle Cloud or Workday as a comprehensive system. And ours are bifurcated right now, and it's what we have. But the last time I talked to IT, they said we wouldn't get a new ERP in that person's lifetime. So anyway, but it's not that we haven't asked. We did put in a budget request this year again for a talent management system. That system would allow us to have a learning management system, and we'd have a host of courses for people to take. It would allow us to have career pathing within that. We could send out messages to groups of employees when we wanted to target different audiences. And then we would have a new applicant tracking and onboarding system. So it looks pretty amazing, the one we looked at, but of course we would be open to whoever would bid on that if we should get the money for that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, question 2. We've talked about this one a couple of times, and Vice President Classione and I met with you regarding this topic. So what is the normal practice or expectation at the university if is a director expected to, quote, cover the work of another staff member that leaves the university, and then a lead into that, and is there a policy on additional compensation for additional work?
Okay, you all had talked to me about a policy on additional compensation for additional work, and we were working on getting that out as guidelines. It's certainly each area has to determine how best to do that when someone leaves. Generally, however, as a director, your question came in last night to me, a director is responsible for a number of people and a number of processes, and they're usually paid more than employees that are doing the work. So when a director loses a staff member, and let's say they have 3 staff members and they go down to 2, somehow between the 3 people left over, they're expected to get the job done. If a director takes on all the job duties themselves, we generally don't give a pay increase, a supplement, or any kind of temporary salary adjustment for that period of time when a director takes it on, because they're already responsible for that work given where they are in the chain of command. However, when a coworker takes on more duties or different duties, then typically we are used to seeing a department or division send in paperwork to show, ask for an increase, a temporary salary adjustment until that position is filled, but not always. I mean, again, sometimes when somebody leaves, I know my last budget person said, Caroline, you don't have enough money to fill all your positions, so you've got to balance your budget every time people leave through attrition. And so that's how some departments do it. It's just the nature of how we are staffed here and budgeted here at the university. But many organizations try to reward those people, whether it's a bonus, and a director can get a bonus at the end of that period of time for doing the extra work, or whether or not we can actually give somebody a temporary salary adjustment during that time would be ideal. So what we want to do is send out those guidelines so people know what's available, that supervisors can advocate if they don't even know that this is an option. And that's what we think is happening. Sometimes the leadership might know it's an option and they don't want to do it because of budgetary reasons, but other times they don't even know it might be an option to be able to pay that person for doing the work while they're out. I hope that helps.
And then last submitted question, several staff from the university libraries have asked about support for pay equity with all staff, since university libraries now have funds for compression and compensable factors to be considered.
Yes, to my knowledge, there is no money being given to the units for this, other than recently the provost office got together the academic units, and there was a communication that went out from Mary Alexander saying that they would look at the percentage of their personal services for what they're paying people who are below the midpoint, and try to give some money to bring some of the people up toward the midpoint. I mean, I think that it has been misconstrued and misinterpreted that we in HR have said everybody needs to be at the midpoint, which is considered the market value, but not everybody. It really depends on those compensable factors like how long you've been in that job, the education you have, and then also things like specialized skills that you may have. And so we consider equity. So if somebody is doing the exact same job and they're making, 5% above the new minimum, and somebody else is doing the same job and they have more years of experience, but they're not going to be able to bump the person who has the less years of experience the same performance over the person who has been there longer doing that job if all other factors are the same. So we are very careful with equity, because what we don't want is somebody to be a favorite and just be bounced up to the midpoint, when somebody who's been there, again, on paper, they look exactly like the other person. And then when you look at things like gender, or you look at age, or you look at other factors that could be viewed as a reason for why that person didn't get a raise, then we have to be very careful in HR in reviewing those. So, but if somebody's performance is higher and consistently higher than someone else's, that is a compensable factor that can be used to, again, move that person toward the midpoint.
Those were the pre-submitted questions. So Senator Herron back here.
Yeah, someone called me, I'm the chair, as you know.
Yes, hi Beth.
Helping committee. Someone called me a couple weeks ago, who's a research grant employee, and asked me about family leave for research grant employees, maternity leave, because she apparently is pregnant or was pregnant and was not covered by that as a research grant.
She's probably, it could be talking about parental leave.
Parental leave.
Okay, that's okay. That's all right. As you all, many of you know, parental leave was a new leave type that was given to state employees last October 1. But it was when the legislature passed the the law, they only allowed it for FTE employees. So as a research grant or even a time limited or temporary employees, they are not entitled to parental leave, paid parental leave. And so
Can an investigator provide it, or is that not?
no, they cannot provide any kind of paid leave beyond what the state of South Carolina gives. Now, as a research grant, some grants allow that the employee can get leave. We encourage that. And so they could accumulate sick leave. And just like before parental leave, you can use your sick leave toward that. But that certainly is not usually enough if they're newer in their position to, yes, yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Any other questions about policies? Yes.
I have two questions. George Doran from the Law School
Yes.
Business. When the employees leave, there's now an automated exit interview.
Yes.
Understand that?
Yes.
Are there any plans for supervisors to receive that information? It would be really helpful to know what the employee said
Yes.
and if there's something that needed to be rectified.
Absolutely. Georgia, let me kind of go back in time a little bit. And since probably within 6 months after I came here in 2011, we started doing exit interviews through SurveyMonkey. And we've been doing those for a long, long time. Again, with the transition to PeopleSoft, what we found with SurveyMonkey is we then couldn't tell where they were. There were no, we might say where you located, this and that, but we really were just giving that data back very aggregate to the departments and the various colleges. Now with PeopleSoft, we have begun giving that information to the HR folks of the colleges and the different schools and departments, and we will continue to do that. I think they've done like a trial right now to make sure, that they know what to do with that data, because the last thing we want is that employee, while we can see who that employee is because they fill it out in PeopleSoft and know exactly, what happened, we also know that you want to be careful with how you give that information back to a supervisor, especially if it's negative. I mean, you do want the environment to improve. That's the whole reason you do an exit interview, so that supervisor knows what feedback and they can make some changes, positive changes. And sometimes we get great experiences that are communicated through the exit interview. So it's good to have the positive and the negative, so so that the improvements could be made. But also, I think we even ask a question: is there somebody at the university who, through working that you worked with, that really you could point out to being a great example? And so we could hold that out. I think we've written a couple of articles in our supervisory newsletter about that. But
Can I have one more
yes.
thing? You said that the turnover rate was down 2%, which is great.
Yeah.
What is it? What is the actual hard number?
I think it's 14.6%. I meant to swing by my office after my last meeting and check that, but I think that's what it was. Okay. Yes, sir.
Very involved UIC. I have a question related to compensation and equity. As it relates to years of service, I have a situation with the recent classification and compensation where someone who has been in the university for 25 years and someone who's been in the university for 2 years are now making the exact same.
Yeah.
What's your advice on that, and how is that equitable, or is that something that's coming in phase 3?
That is supposed to be part of phase 3, and we've been in phase 3, and I know we've met with the Division of IT on phase 3. I don't think they've acted on everything given their new interim leader, but I do think they are working toward that, Barry. In terms of that was one of the problems created by the study. Quite frankly, we didn't know we weren't going to get money to do that next phase, and that's why we ended up doing it in phase, to be honest with you. When we started this, it was in the strategic priorities under President Caslin, and we put it in the report to do. We, again, did it on our own with HR without a consultant helping us with this, but we certainly, got enough input from other institutions on how they had done it. And what we did was moved everybody to this new market minimum. And then knowing that we would have that compression, and we, again, thought we were going to have money to go toward that, we then wanted people to be able to move toward that midpoint. And what we're doing is just working with those departments to identify those people that are top performers that are like that, or those that have clearly those years of experience that have done a great job that they want to be moved up. But in doing that, we're also looking at everybody else who's in that same title in that group to make sure we're not creating more equitable. It's not inequitable to move them to the minimum of it, although yes, it's compression. But once we start moving people within that, we want to make sure that we're using those compensable factors, and we can explain why somebody makes $10,000 more than that person who's making the minimum.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes.
I know that we obviously have a formalized process and we're revamping that with the EPMS on ways for supervisors to provide feedback for employees, but is there like a formalized process or system or way that employees can provide feedback to their supervisors or like on their supervisors?
Like almost a 360 kind of thing. We don't have that as part of the evaluation process. I know some areas or some corporations do. We use 360s more on our leaders when they go through leadership training, where they do receive a 360 and they're able to process that information out as a development opportunity for them. And so anybody that goes through our emerging leader program or a PAL program get that. We also have that available from time to time. We might work with the unit to do several leaders in their unit to get that input, but we do not have that built into the new process, nor do we have that just customarily available. So. Any other questions? Yeah.
When we moved into through this process, and we moved from the state pay bands to these new market ranges, there are more market ranges than there were pay bands. So I've run into a situation where people are paid right at the very end of the top, so to speak, of this new range, and they don't see that as they're not too happy with it, number one, but they don't see where they have any movement. So when you went from 8 bands or 9 bands up to whatever it is now, where they fell is just where they fell.
Yeah, a couple of comments about that, Georgia. The state of South Carolina is doing exactly what we did. They have a consultant, Mercer, working with them, paying them $500,000. So, kudos to them that they were able to get Mercer to help them. But with that, we expect to see them go to market pay as well. I don't know exactly what will happen, quite frankly, because, of course, if they go to that and they're not budget neutral, then the General Assembly has to fund it for state agencies, where we were able to fund it within the university. So, we've been kept abreast by the state human resources director. She's going to come to another meeting, I think maybe next Monday with us. We meet as a group of higher education institutions in South Carolina on a monthly basis, and the state HR director usually comes every other month to meet with us as well. So we don't want to be left behind by their study, but they're not including higher education. But as a result of that, Georgia, we do think their, if you will, bands will go up, or their grades will go up, because that is what the market data is showing. The other thing is they have 85% ranges because they had 10 bands and what they call broad banding that they did in 1997, I believe. And because they went to that in 1997 and did away with a lot of back then they had 40 grades from grades 10 to grade 50. And they, then almost made it too broad, where none of these titles related to anything in the market, and everybody could be a program coordinator, and you didn't really know what they did. And so we've gone back to a little bit more what we consider descriptive titles that can actually, peg where you are in the market if you're an admissions counselor or if you're doing something in financial aid, because we think that's more relevant to your job than just to be something called a program manager. What does that really mean? So hopefully with the state and the movement we'll have there, that will loosen us up. And if they go to, let's say, a larger pay range or even a smaller pay range, we may look at where we are in relation to them. This higher education group has there's a law that allows us to have a separate system from the state. We have been part of their system because they could not, how do I want to explain this? They could not put two systems in their ERP. They have something called SAP, like we have PeopleSoft, and they only allow one group of bands or one group of pay ranges. And so now they have opened it up where there can be two, one for higher ed and one for the state. But we either want to come alongside with them or we want to be back where they were, and we may transition to where they go, but we don't know that yet. It's really something that we want only to be competitive with our market. And then the other thing, Georgia, I would say about that is as someone grows in their job and takes on new skills, new duties, new responsibilities, they could possibly go up, if they're in the, what we have levels within these jobs, so they could possibly go up to from a P2 to a P3 or 4 or something like that. So there are ways they can grow. And then we're going to be looking at career pathing within our new system. And then if we got a talent management system, we would be able to put our career paths within this new system. So that would really open up the door in a big way. Thank you.
All right, so we'll keep moving, but if you do have additional questions that we're not answering, if you can just email us, we'll make sure that we can get those to Caroline and get those answers to you. So
it's always good to see y'all, be with you, and please don't hesitate to reach out to me if you need me to come back again.
We will.
All right.
Caroline, thank you again for being with us. And again, if you have additional questions or any constituents online who are listening, if you have questions, please get those to your staff senator and we'll be sure to get those questions answered. Sticking with our topic at hand, which was there's several senators had reached out. We discussed this with Caroline regarding compensation when additional benefits, or excuse me, when additional work responsibilities are added to someone's workload when a staff member leaves. So you've got two handouts. One is the salary adjustments outside of pay policy. Thank you to Treasurer Barry when we were discussing this, made the suggestion that we share this with staff. One of the reasons is you as a staff senator, we as staff senators are not charged with being HR experts, but we want to make sure we know where the resources are. So if you do have a question regarding, or a constituent asks you a question regarding additional pay, you now have a copy of the policy. We will email the policy out so you have it. But one of the things we want to make sure that all of us have are the resources when individuals do reach out to us regarding additional compensation. So I want to make sure everyone had the policy. The other handout you had is kind of a glossary of all the various HR terms, particularly when it relates to additional compensation. So one of the things that we found as many senators were discussing this is that we want to make sure that U.S. senators know all the different mechanisms that additional pay can be achieved, whether it's a TSA, whether it's a one-time bonus, whether it's a permanent raise. There are a number of different avenues and mechanisms that can be utilized. There are a number of times, depending on the circumstance, that a certain type of additional pay cannot be used. So we want to make sure that as senators, that if you have a staff member that reaches out to you, or that any staff that may be listening is aware that just because one avenue or one mechanism does not work, does not mean that there's not another. So we wanted to ensure that you all had the policy, or excuse me, the various different types. Certainly, please consult with your HR experts in your unit, but we have found, which is a very good thing, that we have a number of staff members who are reaching out directly to their senators. So we want to ensure that you all knew that if we had this instance occur this year, that because of the employee's circumstances, one avenue was not allowable. However, there was another that was. And so hopefully that additional avenue will provide some flexibility to the unit and to the HR contact in that unit so that they can go that avenue to get some additional very warranted compensation. A little editorializing on my end, so I apologize for getting out front. But I did hear the story and it sounded like a very worthy thing. The other updates I have. So this is a carryover from previous Senate group in regards to, particularly in World Mental Health Day, the mental health space for staff on campus. So we visited with Derek Gruner, as well as Ms. Kumis in the architect's office. They are currently identifying space. We're looking at possibly 3 locations and identifying space and a budget for those that when we'll take back to President Amaritas for approval. So this came out of staff policy and well-being a year ago. We're working on that. The idea is that we want to make sure that staff have somewhere that's private, that they can go, relax, decompress, re-energize, have a moment to themselves. One of the key things we wanted were to place these in areas strategically around campus so that staff didn't have to walk